I made this such and such dua, or I did something, so suddenly you can try to come up with some supporting evidence, if you will, that you did 3, right? But if you are not sure, then you build on the certainty, and you will do at the end of the salawat sujud sahu. Yeah, you pray 2 sajdas of forgetfulness, yeah, prostrations. If we are sure that we have prayed 1 rak'ah, then we should continue by performing our 2nd rak'ah. This is the example that he gives. Okay? Now, the 3rd lesson he mentions here, reconciling between different opinions within the Sharia. So we may have opposing fatwas, opposing opinions from scholars, sometimes within the same madhab. The madhab may have multiple opinions, right? Hanbali madhab on one issue may have up to 13 opinions. What do? How can we differentiate which is the correct one, especially if we don't see anything that's making one opinion clearly to us stronger than the other, due to our maybe knowledge or exposure, right? There are many matters relating to the Sharia where scholars hold conflicting views or opinions, meaning the opinions are the opposite. For example, some scholars say that it is wajib to recite Surah Al-Fatiha in the congregational prayer, while other scholars state that listening to the Imam's recitation of the Fatiha is sufficient. Correct? Shafi'i madhab, we believe what? Must read Fatiha in every rak'ah. Hanafi madhab says you don't have to read it at all. If you're a ma'mum, even the silent prayer, don't read it. Imam read it, it's sufficient for you. Right. Other madhab said, no, if it's silent one, everyone has to read. If it's loud one, you don't have to read if the imam is reading, right? So we have these differing opinions. Another example is paying of zakah on women's jewelry. Famous difference of opinion among scholars. We know we have to pay zakah on gold, correct? But what if that gold is a woman's jewelry that she wears for beautification? Do you have to pay on it or not? Difference of opinion amongst the madhabs or scholars on this matter. Whether a woman has to pay zakah for jewelry that she uses personally, not meant for investment, not like a gold bar that you buy as an investment, but it's jewelry that you want to wear and so on. This is another fiqh issue which has opposing rulings. In these situations, can we apply this hadith and the criterion that it gives? According to some scholars, in these matters of Sharia, where one can choose one of the 2 conflicting rulings, one should choose the more cautious, quote-unquote, approach. So you will find scholars at times saying, al-ahwat. They will say the safer side, the safer opinion, do it this way, just in case. Why? Because there's a very strong argument on either side. Each one is quoting some hadith, each one is bringing some opinion of scholars or sahaba from the past and so on. So it's not 100% clear, as if it's like 50-50, right? For that scholar. So they may say, no, in this case, I'm going to go for the more cautious approach. We discussed this in hadith number 6, where we saw that Imam Bukhari held this view. If you remember, we brought some example from his life and so on. So for the issue of reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, those who insist that its recitation is compulsory, even in the congregational prayer, they follow the cautious approach. Similarly, in the case of zakah with regards to jewelry, the cautious approach is that zakah be paid for all jewelry, regardless of whether it is going to be worn or it was purchased for investment. That would be the safe side, right? Pay the zakah, it's 2.5%, pay it rather than don't pay it. Now, for some scholars though, one opinion may be stronger than the other. Why? Because they are exposed to a hadith that the other scholars didn't know about. For them, the hadith that the other scholars are using is weak. They found a weakness in the chain of narration, so they don't consider that a valid evidence anymore. So the evidence that they have surpasses that evidence. Therefore, the issue for them is clear. So this kind of a concept is relative. You understand what that means? It's relative according to your knowledge and your perspective. That's why we don't need to fight with each other on these kind of issues. You understand? There is no amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar on a topic like this. There's no enjoining good and forbidding evil in a topic like this, where there's a very valid, well-known difference of opinion based on strong evidence and a sound methodology. Meaning, each opinion is based on Quran and Sunnah, not based on whatever I think and feel and imagine. And they went to the authentic Hadith and they interpreted it according to the correct and valid rules of the Arabic language, and so on and so forth. Right? So in this kind of a topic, there is no enjoining good and forbidding evil. We don't come to the one who's doing the other opinion and say, haram, what are you doing? You are mubtada'. Don't you know what you are doing is wrong? And so on. No, not like that. Because some people didn't understand this. They think what their opinion that they're following is sunnah and the other opinion is bid'ah. It's not like that. This is a very simplistic, black and white, wrong understanding of the deen. Yeah? When there is a matter like this where one is opposite of the other in their opinion, and only one is correct. Only one is correct. Allah and His Prophet ﷺ intended one or the other. Only one is correct. Can both of these opinions be rewarded on the Day of Judgment? Will they both be rewarded by Allah on the Day of Judgment, or is one going to be punished? What do you think? Both are going to be rewarded. The Prophet ﷺ says, when the judge, the mufti, the scholar, he comes and he makes a judgment in a religious matter, if he's wrong, the Prophet ﷺ said he gets what? Sins? No, he gets good deeds. He gets a good deed for being wrong. Why? Because he had a good intention. He followed the right methodology. He's searching for the truth. He's not searching for his own personal opinion or benefit. He's not giving a fatwa to make money or to please the government or anything like that. He's doing it for the sake of Allah. He believes this opinion he said is the truth. Even though he was wrong, the Prophet ﷺ said he'll get a reward from Allah. And the one who is correct, what will he get? He'll get double the reward. One for his good intention and methodology, one for his correct answer. Now, the people like us, we don't make ijtihad, we don't make fatwas, we follow. We follow scholars, we follow their fatwas. Now, each of these scholars will have followers. The followers, is one going to be sinful and one going to get rewarded? No, both will get rewarded. Both will get rewarded. This is the beauty, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge you on the Day of Judgment as an individual. What did you believe? For example, in the salah, we find a famous difference of opinion among scholars. When you go down for sujood, do you go down with your hands first or your knees first? You say hands, others said knees. Famous scholars, past and present, they said knees. Right? Do we say the hands is sunnah and the knees is bid'ah? Of course not. A'udhu billah. This is a famous opinion. They differed in interpreting the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Some may differ in the authenticity of some hadith, so on and so forth. Yes? There's a reason why that difference occurs. We don't know it because we didn't study enough. We still don't have that level of deep understanding. If you want to learn and understand it, study. Spend more time and energy, you will know why there's a difference of opinion. Now, the difference of opinion is there. Only one is correct. The Prophet ﷺ, either he went down hands first or knees first. One is the correct one. It's not a case in this situation of where the Prophet ﷺ did both. Because in some things in the prayer, we find he did more than one way. So more than one way is sunnah, more than one way is valid. In this case, it's he did one or the other. So one opinion is correct, one is wrong. But the beauty is that Allah can reward the followers of both opinions on the Day of Judgment as if they were doing something good. It's not one will get reward and one will get sins. No. Because both intended, I believe this is the truth. We say in Arabic, هَذَا مَا أُدِينُ اللَّهَ بِهِ. This is the deen I have with Allah. This is the deen. This is the way I worship Allah. I believe that what I am doing is what Allah wanted me to do. This is what Allah and His Messenger ﷺ taught us to do. Therefore, I'm doing this. I should not follow it because I say, for example, this is what we do in my country. What? I prayed Jum'ah, I prayed Eid prayer in a masjid, and the guy was introducing, and there are a lot of international people there and so on, and he said, in our country, this is how we pray Eid prayer. What? In your country? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came to your country and gave you a special flavor and version of Islam, so you have the national way of doing Eid prayer, and then other countries, they have their own way of doing it? No, this is not the right way to introduce things. You say, this is how we believe the Prophet ﷺ prayed the Eid prayer, that's why we do it this way. We are all searching for the truth. Now, some people may be correct, some people may be wrong, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can still reward everybody, actually, because they believe that what they were doing was correct. But for them to believe that, it has to be built on what? Built on some evidence. It has to be a sound methodology that was followed. It cannot be one night I had a dream and in my dream I saw this, so I think it's the truth. Some people follow that. Some Sufi group, you'll say, why you are doing that? They said, because our sheikh saw a dream. In the dream he was told to do that, so we all do it now. What? He's a prophet of Allah. He receives wahy in his dreams from Allah. What are you talking about? A'udhu billah. We follow our religion based on the Quran, based on the Sunnah, and so on. So if the opinion we are following, we believe is based on Quran and based on Sunnah and so on, then we can accept it. Why is there a difference of opinion in the first place? For some people, that's hard for us to accept. There should be no difference of opinion. That's like saying there should be no difference between human beings. We're not robots, there are differences. Do we all have the same level of intelligence? No. Do we all have the same level of understanding? No. Do we all have the same level of knowledge? No. At that time, did they all have access to exactly the same hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in the early days? No. Why? Because all the hadith were not compiled in one place. They were manually going to the people and hearing from them, and they were saying to them, we heard so-and-so say that so-and-so said that the Prophet ﷺ said. There was only one or two people between them and the Prophet ﷺ, for example, right? So it was still in the very early days. They were getting those sayings directly. So you find Imam al-Shafi'i, for example, many of you will not be familiar with that. He has what's called the old madhab and the new madhab. Yeah? If you read in his life and in his writings and his history and so on, he changed his opinion on many things. Why? What caused him to change his opinion? But how did he get new information? What did he do? He traveled. He traveled. In the beginning he was in Medina, he's learning from Imam Malik, later on he's in Iraq, and then he's in Egypt and so on. As he's traveling, he got exposed to new hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and suddenly he realized, oh, the opinion I had on this matter was wrong because I didn't realize there's a clear statement of the Prophet ﷺ regarding this. Wherever there's a clear statement, then there's no room for me to make ijtihad anymore. I don't come and make my own personal opinion on that, because there's a clear statement of the Prophet ﷺ. You see? So this is why you may find there are differences of opinion. It's not something for us to be upset about or flustered by. It's actually a way for us to get closer to Allah and worship Him. Did you realize that? Why? Because it's a great act of worship to strive to find the truth. You have to put a little bit of effort. You have to dig and you have to search and you have to ask and you have to investigate. When the scholars would come and debate each other, they're doing it for what? So they can crush their opponent? Is that the goal? No, the goal is, I want to make the truth apparent. Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah himself, when he would debate with someone on religious matter, he said, if the truth comes out on my brother's tongue, it's not a problem for me. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to follow it. It's not about I want my opinion to win because it's my opinion. No, I believe what I'm saying is what Allah and His Prophet ﷺ wanted. If I find out it's not, immediately I'll retract. They were very quick to change their position or change their opinion if they felt what they had said is wrong. And they know as human beings, they might be wrong. Right? So we sometimes treat them as infallible. They are gods. Whatever they said must be right. No, he's a human being. He's a scholar. He could be right most of the time and wrong sometimes. So we should be ready also to change our position if we find out the position we are following is weak, is incorrect, is not most likely the correct opinion in that matter. Why? Because we're striving to seek the truth and follow the truth. Hopefully that makes it more clear for us, yes? Okay. So here they bring that, what we mentioned earlier. He says, another common instance where a Muslim may have uncertainty is if they are in a state of wudu before salah. This case again goes back to that which is certain. If they last had been in a state of wudu but are unsure whether their wudu was nullified, then they should go by that which is certain, that they have the wudu. On the other hand, if they have been in a state where they were not in wudu and are unsure if they made wudu, then they should assume that they do not have wudu. Okay? Of course, we're not going deep into fiqh, like this issue of zakat on the jewelry, reading Surah Al-Fatiha. This one we need to take it as a separate topic. You don't necessarily leave from here and say, my opinion on this matter now is such and such, right? Me personally, for example, I would follow the opinion in Surah Al-Fatiha that I must read it in the silent prayers or rak'ahs, but I don't have to read it in the rak'ahs that are out loud. The Imam's recitation is sufficient for me, right? Some other scholars would say, no, to be on the safe side, read it even in the ones where it's loud. But then they say you shouldn't read when the Imam is reading, so they try to come up with some workaround for that. Read in between the pauses, for example, when he stops or something like this. But I personally don't feel comfortable with that opinion. Don't follow that. Looking back on Islamic history, we can see that some scholars went for one approach while other scholars were for the other. The cautious approach has been a well-known approach for scholars in the case of conflicting Sharia views. Nevertheless, it is important to note that scholars who do not follow the cautious approach also have legitimate evidences to support the opposing Sharia viewpoints. Meaning, again, if you know that an opinion, if a scholar feels one opinion is stronger than the other, then for him these are not equal opposing viewpoints anymore. Therefore, he has to follow the one he believes is stronger. Yet another approach of the scholars regarding conflicting Sharia viewpoints is the matter of the authenticity and the soundness of the evidence. So if there's two hadith, one is extremely authentic, one is good but not to the same level of authenticity. They may prefer one over the other, for example, right? If there is a sound dalil to the viewpoint, then scholars will apply it since it is legitimate. Following this, it is not crucial to determine which of the possible fiqh viewpoints are more worthy if the respective viewpoint has sound evidence through the Quran and Sunnah. And this is what Shaykh Hussein and others call for, right? Those who call for following hadith and not blindly following the madhab. Why do they call for that? Because some of the opinions in the madhab may not be based on hadith. Why? Because if they didn't know there's a clear hadith in that topic, then they will make what? Ijtihad. What does ijtihad mean? What does this word ijtihad mean? It means using personal reasoning to deduce a ruling or judgment. Does it mean they just randomly choose from their imagination when they're doing ijtihad? No, no. They look at the Quran and Sunnah in general, and they deduce from the Quran and Sunnah general principles and rules. For example, we gave one fiqh principle earlier. We said certainty, right? What was the wording of it? We said certainty takes precedence in doubtful matters, right? Certainty is not eliminated by doubt. This is a general rule or principle that they've derived from some of the various sayings of the Prophet ﷺ. So we can then apply that in different scenarios, right? So they'll take these kind of general principles and rules and they'll try to apply that in a scenario that they feel hasn't been explicitly talked about in the Quran or Sunnah. Does that make sense? Like, for example, we need to make a fatwa on something which hasn't been explicitly mentioned by Allah and His Messenger. Do we need a fatwa about alcohol? Is it halal or haram? We don't need a fatwa. Why? Because the ruling is there. It's very clear. Alcohol is haram. How about cigarettes? Smoking tobacco. Is there any clear mention of it by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says don't smoke cigarettes? Cigarettes are haram? So here we make a fatwa. We have to determine, are cigarettes halal or haram? In the old days, the scholars used to say, a lot of them, that it's what? What did they used to consider cigarettes? Haram or something else? Makruh. Yeah? Makruh. Makruh means what? Huh? What does makruh mean? Something which is disliked. Better for you not to do it, but no sin if you do it. Why were the scholars saying that? Because they didn't necessarily understand the full ramifications and implication of smoking like they do today. So they considered that if somebody smokes, then what? His clothes smell bad, his mouth smells bad, it's a bad smell. We don't come to the salah and we smell like onions and garlic, for example, right? The Prophet ﷺ said the angels will hate such a thing. Don't come to the house of Allah praying next to your Muslim brother in congregation and you stink. So the person then shouldn't smoke. Why? Because they will come and bother the musallin. This is the kind of thought process that was going on possibly at that time. Why? Because they didn't know there's this direct correlation between smoking and lung cancer and emphysema and death and all these horrible things that the smoking causes to your health that they understand today, right? When scholars understood, hey, smoking, you are directly killing yourself, actually. It's haram to kill yourself. You are now speeding up and bringing on horrible diseases to yourself and so on, destroying your body and your health and your ability to breathe and so on and so forth. So after that, scholars said, oh no, this is clearly haram then. Why? Because there are general principles. Allah says in the Quran, don't destroy yourself. You cannot destroy yourself like this. You are now spending money and actively putting your time and effort into killing yourself. This is not allowed, right? So the position then changes and we say, no, haram. You are wasting your money, you are wasting your life, you are, and so on. Because there's no real benefit that comes out of smoking whatsoever, right? Except for maybe the one who's addicted, they need the nicotine, that's about it. Do you understand? So, we don't make ijtihad in something where there's a very clear text. Allah said in the ayah of Quran, the Prophet ﷺ said in the Hadith, if there's a clear statement about that issue, there's no room for scholars to come and debate it or have their opinion on it or anything like that. No, because it's already become very clear. But where there is no clear evidence, then scholars have to try to deduce. They have to use their intelligence and use the principles they understood from the Sharia to try to give a fatwa. And in a fatwa, you are doing what? You are speaking on behalf of who? You are speaking on behalf of who when you give a fatwa? The scholar who gives a fatwa is speaking on behalf of who? Behalf of Allah. That's why Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, when he wrote a book, he said, إِعْلَامَ الْمُوَقِّعِينَ عَنْ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. This is a notification to all those who sign on behalf of Allah. When you sign your fatwa, you are saying, this is what I believe Allah wants. Because Allah's religion. That's why the Sahaba, when somebody would come in the masjid and say, I'm looking for someone to give me a fatwa, answer my question, what did the Sahaba do? Sorry, not me, talk to him, ask him. And they would get past 20, 30 Sahaba, one after the other, he would say, talk to him, ask him, I'm not going to answer. Even he knows, I don't know, please. I'm not sure. He doesn't want to take that responsibility because he says, what if there's a saying of the Prophet ﷺ I didn't hear? What if I interpreted the Prophet ﷺ's words wrong? The Prophet ﷺ said, those who are here listening to me, pass it on to the ones who are not in attendance. Perhaps they will understand it better than you. Because people have different levels of understanding, right? And so on and so forth. So when a fatwa is being given, the scholar is trying their best to determine, this is what I believe Allah would want and would say in this matter, even though there was no clear statement there. But in Islam, actually, we have all the general rules we need to apply in every scenario in life, alhamdulillah. Allah and the Prophet ﷺ left us with all the general statements we need to be able to deduce what is the truth and what is wanted from Allah in every scenario. Will every scholar who gives a fatwa be correct? No. Sometimes they're going to be wrong. And that's why when we're following the opinion of a scholar, if we find out it is a wrong opinion, we should no longer follow it. There's nothing wrong with that. And the one who calls for that is not saying the madhab is all wrong, don't follow scholars anymore. No, this is also an extremist opinion which says you cannot follow any madhab, you should not follow scholars. What? Then that means you are saying you should be the scholar and make up your own madhab, and this is that's dangerous. That's worse. Yeah, you and I, we don't open Sahih Bukhari on our own and start reading there and start coming up with fatwas and opinions as if we think we know. No, that's not how it works. Just because you read a few hadith doesn't mean then you have the right to give a fatwa on that topic. No way. You have to look at all the ayat, all the ahadith. You have to know deep understanding of Arabic language. You have to know which one is more authentic than the other, which one came first, which one maybe abrogates the other one, and so on and so forth. Many things you have to know before you can give any summation or discussion on that topic. Is it clear? Yeah, we try to go a little bit deeper so we can have proper understanding, but without confusing all of us, inshallah, yeah? Where did we stop? Following this, it is not crucial to determine which of the possible fiqh viewpoints are more worthy if the respective viewpoint has sound evidence from the Quran and Sunnah. It is important to note that despite the many matters within the Sharia which have ikhtilaf, a difference of opinion, most have one unified ruling. Meaning at the higher level, there's no difference of opinion. It's in some application, some branch, some smaller part of it. For example, all the scholars agree Surah Al-Fatiha is very important for Salah. Surah Al-Fatiha is necessary for every rak'ah. The difference of opinion is, if we pray in jama'ah and the Imam is reading the Fatiha, then is that sufficient for everybody in the prayer or not? You see, it's on a branch of it. It's not, they don't agree that Surah Al-Fatiha is a necessary part of Salah. No, everyone agrees upon that. You understand? Okay. One important principle of the Sharia is that Ijtihad, this personal reasoning or deductive, they say Ijtihad is an important principle in Islamic fiqh, where rules are derived from the Sharia for new issues. It is not allowed in a matter that is clearly and definitely elucidated from the Quran, the noble Quran and authentic Sunnah. If there's a very clear statement there, then there's no room for us to make ijtihad. Things we have to do ijtihad about today are the new topics that come up. Now there's cloning. Is cloning allowed or not? There was no cloning in the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. You'll not find any very clear statement. Now the scholars would have to get together and think about this topic and look at the very general principles from the religion of Islam to determine whether they feel this is something that is halal or not. Now there are such a thing as heart transplants. There was not such a thing at that time. The heart transplant, maybe they will take a valve from a pig. They found there's some compatibility and acceptability between pig and human. Is it allowed or not to use the pig part in your heart? Or should you use the metal manufactured one, right? This is something that scholars have debated. Bin Uthaymeen rahimahullah, for example, one of the previous muftis during our times in recent decades said use the pig. If the pig is better than the metal and the body will accept it and so on, then you should, because that will save the life of the person. You will say, "What? I'm shocked, but I thought the pig is wrong." But there are principles that they apply here, which is life and death situation and so on and so forth. Yeah. So these are the kind of matters where we make ijtihad. Why? Because they were not scenarios that occurred during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. For example, some people came to the Sahaba and they said, or this happened to Imam Abu Hanifa, I forgot really the detail, but it happened in the early generations after the Prophet ﷺ's time. So they said, if someone will go to the moon, how would he pray? Which direction is the Qibla? Huh? Here on earth, we say we have to face towards Qibla. Now you're on another planet. Which way you... So they said to him, did such a thing ever happen? He said no. They said, if it happens, come back and ask us. We will gather together all the scholars and the people even who fought in the battle of Badr, the Sahaba. We will bring them. Then we will discuss and come with an issue. Nowadays, does that issue occur? Yes. The Malaysian Muslim astronaut, he went, right, to outer space. So for him, it became a real issue. Hey, how do I pray in outer space? Which direction is the Qibla? So scholars have to now discuss that thing and come with a fatwa. Maybe it's you pray at least in the general direction of earth, right? To the best of your ability, you have to estimate, and that's it. Because you are so far away from Qibla. Allahu A'lam. So the idea is, ijtihad occurs in real matters, things that are happening to us. And alhamdulillah, the Sharia has given us general principles by which we can deduce those rulings. That's something for scholars to do, not for lay people like us who don't have the right tools and qualifications. Lesson D, contemporary doubtful matters. One of the tricks of shaitan is by making that which is forbidden appear to us as if it is permissible. We talked about this before when we did a series on the tactics and tricks of shaitan, right? He'll try to beautify, soften the appearance of something which is evil. Even you'll find it's used with different names. Rather than calling alcohol, they'll call it spirits. right? Social lubricant. It will make you more joyful. You laugh and you become friendly guy. And why you are making something bad? They don't talk about the one who, when he's drunk, he's a wife beater. No, they say, look at the one who drinks, then he becomes the life of the party. Yes. So they want to use words to make the bad thing seem nice. This is one of the tactics of shaitan. One should always be aware so as not to be deceived by Satan. If something is haram, then it will always be haram. We must never allow shaitan to influence us and change our perception into thinking that something which is forbidden may not be all that bad and can be indulged in. Again, this is that haram is clear, halal is clear, there are doubtful matters. Don't suddenly make the haram doubtful. And because of that you say, well, it's only doubtful, so I'm going to do it because I think it's more halal than it is haram. No. For example, in today's society, riba, usury, the interest and haram, we may take the loan to buy the house and the car and do all this kind of personal financing and so on, right? What is it called? Do they call it filth and the way Allah and the Prophet ﷺ described it? No, they call it interest. Oh, so nice word, interest. Profit. Allah said, riba and buying and selling and making profit are not the same thing. Don't make them one and the same. Oh, we are just making money, we're doing business. This is not business. There's no value added in the economy whatsoever by getting money out of your money just like that. There's no risk, there's no a tangible investment, there's no benefit, right? The bank gives a loan and then wants interest. They use your money to lend, so they give you some of that interest. This is not the way. This is what's destroying the economy of the whole world today. This is why inflation is as high as it is. This is why people can't even afford to buy a car or a house. Now you work your whole life, you are lucky if you leave where you own the house that you lived in for 40, 50 years. This is ridiculous. It's not the way our forefathers lived. It's not the way we are supposed to live. But that's what's happened. Why? Because we made the haram as if it's something halal. And you find Muslims engaging in it. And I tell them, brother, you're buying your house or car with haram. What are you doing? He said, no, I don't go for the Islamic route because this way is cheaper. Wow, okay. Save a few dollars in exchange for the punishment in the hereafter. It's not worth it. And that thing which you buy then is a curse upon you and your family. Then they come and they say, brother, we all have cancer. We all face this. We all have horrible things in our life. Everything is problems. Why? I said, because you cursed yourself. You made your whole life haram. Everything is haram. The food you eat is haram. The car you drive is haram. The house is haram. Your whole life is financed through haram. What do you want? You brought the curse of Allah upon yourself and your family. You have no one else to blame but yourself. This is one area where many Muslims are confused as to whether something is allowable or otherwise. It is better to avoid these doubtful business dealings or transactions where there are no clear views from the scholars. So if you are about to invest in something and you are not sure whether it's halal or not, ask and find out. The original state of affairs is that financial transactions are halal, unless there's something clear that proves that it's haram. But we live in a world today now where almost every transaction, especially if it's financing and these kind of things, is somehow underlying it is riba. The Prophet ﷺ said there will come a time where even if you don't directly deal with riba and do it yourself, you will get affected by the dust of riba. This is the description he gave, right? So now the riba is prevailing, right? Even you work for that multinational company, they are paying you, part of their income is from riba, even though you yourself are not directly working with it. So it's so ingrained into the financial system of the world that even the Islamic banking and financial system just sits on top of the riba-based system. They're not free and completely independent, unfortunately, right? Nor will anyone allow them to become, right? The IMF and the World Bank and all those institutions, they don't want that to happen. They would never allow it to happen because their job is enslaving countries, right? We've seen that as they've done it time and time again, and they've tried a few times with your country. May Allah protect it. Okay, often issues which require guidance for the general Muslim public, like finance and business, are not broadcast sufficiently throughout the ummah. So this is a comment the Shaykh makes. He says, unfortunately, there's a lot of ignorance in the ummah, and I've seen that as well. When it comes to, for example, Islamic business dealings and financial transactions, most Muslims have almost zero knowledge about it. Because growing up, we study about wudu and salah and fasting and these kind of like basic ibadat, right? It's called fiqh al-ibadat. But we never really studied much about fiqh al-mu'amalat, the fiqh of transactions and Islamic dealings and contracts and so on, we don't understand much about it. And that's wrong, because many of us are business people, many of us are entrepreneurs, many of us are running companies, many of us are doing this on a regular basis. We should know the basic Islamic principles. So you need to invest some time and effort to learn about the Islamic rulings related to the financial dealings and transactions, at least at the level that you need, depending on what your role is in life. Issues like these are discussed by scholars, but their views are not being promoted sufficiently throughout the Muslim world, and the end result is that many Muslims become misguided. Many of the contemporary renowned Islamic scholars, they have annual conferences or conventions where they assemble and discuss contemporary issues. I worked for ISRA here, the International Sharia Research Academy for Islamic Finance in Malaysia. They have a lot of these conferences, they write a lot of papers, there's a lot of good work, but it's not reaching to our level actually. Most general population have never read what they come up with, or a lot of times the research they do is very technical and meant for specialists in that field. People who work in the Islamic banks, Islamic finance, policy makers and so on, they write addressing them. It's not for the layman. And this is one of my advice to organizations like that. Try to do more targeted talks and papers to the general masses. You have to educate Muslims in general about what does it mean to do things Islamically in your financial life, because it's a huge part of our life and it's a huge cause of problems in the life, right? The Prophet ﷺ in the hadith we went through in the last session was talking about the person's dua will not be answered. Why? Because his food is from haram and his clothes are from haram. This is all talking about what? The financial transactions. How we are earning our money, how we are spending our money, and so on. And most of us, we will have investments. We put our money in EPF. EPF is halal or not? Now, only recently they came up with Sharia compliant EPF. Why? Because they realized the conventional EPF was not halal, but all the Muslims' money was in that, right? So you have to also educate yourself and wake yourself up. When we met with CFOs from Islamic banks, for example, and we said, you know, why things are not more Islamic. Your product, for example, is not Islamic enough. Their response is, because these people, they don't want it. Right? So we, the consumer, the customer, if we're not demanding something to be Islamic, they're not going to provide it, because they're businesses, they provide what the market asks for. Right? So if we put our foot down and say, hey, unless it's very Islamic, I'm not going to go for it, then they're going to keep providing that. So many people who put their money in the Islamic bank say, for example, I want a set percentage with zero risk. I want it to be like this and like that, which means they want what? They want the conventional only. That's it. That's not the Islamic system. The Islamic system is you invest your money with somebody and there's risk and you both share in that risk. And there's return. The higher the risk, the higher the return. The less the risk, the less the return. This is the basic principle of investing. But most people are used to the conventional system, which is I put my money in the bank and there's zero risk. The bank insures that money and tells me we're not going to play with your money, and even if we play with it, it won't touch you. You're going to get your set interest rate regardless. And then they go and invest it any way they want, and they make billions and billions out of your money, and you get nothing. You get some breadcrumbs that barely cover the cost of inflation probably, right? As the value of your money decreases year on year. So, I'm not trying to go deep into that, but the idea is if we don't understand much about it, then we don't even know what to demand for. And if we're not making the demand, then the market is not going to adjust to us, and we're just kind of following along like sheep. But we have the power because we are the customer, we are the consumer. And that party that's providing those products, they want to make money out of you. That's it. Their goal is to make money. If they can make money through you or from you in a very halal way, they'll do it. I was at the Islamic Finance Conference. The guy on the stage speaking is Jewish. He's not Muslim. He doesn't give a damn about your religion. He's only there because there's money. It's a trillions of dollar industry. And he knows now that the Muslim world is full of cash. While Europe is drying up and America is already dead, and financially these superpowers are crumbling. They don't have money. They have huge debts, $15–16 trillion debt in America and whatever it is, and they cannot even fund their government for 1, 2, 3 months at a time. They have no money. While the Muslim world, there are countries that have zero debt. There are countries that have billions and billions in cash, all the petrodollars. So they're coming to you saying, Give us your money, we want it. Oh, you want Islamic? We'll give you something Islamic, whatever you want, sure. Right? They'll slap on the Islamic label. Is it really that Islamic? Probably not. They don't care as long as you're willing to put your money into it. That's what they want. So when we demand, no, we want it very Islamic. This is our religion. We're doing it as an act of worship, not just so you can make money out of us like we're a cow to be milked. Right? So if we put our foot down and we insist and we all go towards the Islamic, when we do the insurance, we do takaful. We don't do the conventional insurance. It's haram. When we want to finance something and buy it, we buy it in a halal way. So when we insist on that, things will improve, inshallah. Often their viewpoints are broadcast through the media or are not broadcast through the media or published or only published in certain magazines. Unfortunately, such material is not widely distributed, and many people, including even educators and other scholars, are not aware. There's a missing word there, are not aware of their existence. Despite this, new media such as YouTube and transcriptions of Islamic knowledge in the internet and so on are allowing for the public to have better access to contemporary Islamic viewpoints. So we need to educate ourselves, and that's maybe something we need to propose to Al-Khadim and to Sheikh Hussein, how we can have maybe a workshop or some kind of course or series on the Islamic financial transactions and what is the way that we can do things in a halal way. Yeah, we need to keep ourselves informed with the latest views and opinions of the scholars, especially on matters which relate to our modern lifestyle, especially in the field of banking, insurance, and finance. Yeah, that's one area I think where this doubtful matters may come up a lot. Allah knows best. Okay, let's end with just these couple points here. He talks about ambiguous matters. He said there are many matters that are intrinsically neither good nor bad. For example, the internet, television. Right? These are platforms and tools. They can be used for good. My lecture is being streamed on YouTube right now, right? While there's filth on the other side of the world being streamed on the same platform probably, right? So there can be, they're a double-edged sword. They can be used for good or bad. However, within a certain context or scenario, they can be good or bad. The application of the cautious approach will suggest that we should weigh the benefit and the harm caused by such things. This involves applying the principles extracted from the two main sources of the Islamic jurisprudence. These are, of course, the Noble Quran and the authentic Ahadith or Sunnah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Following the principles which are based on these two main sources will lead us to the conclusion that it is permissible to give up a minor benefit for the purpose of avoiding a major harm. It is also permissible to tolerate a minor harm for the purpose of avoiding a major harm or for the purpose of gaining a major benefit. What does that mean? That means scholars sometimes might give a fatwa, and when they say this thing is haram, don't do it, they don't mean that that thing is haram in and of itself. But they forbid it or they block it because they fear and expect it'll lead to something worse. So for example, when television first came out in conservative Muslim countries around the world, the initial fatwa was TV is haram. Because what did they think about? They said, you're going to put women half naked on the screen for everybody to watch and look at them, and you're going to there propagate wrong ideologies from the colonial powers or the secular world and so on to brainwash our youth. No, we don't want it. TV is haram. Even some strict scholars in the early days would never allow themselves to be filmed on video. They wouldn't allow it to be streamed and so on, right? Part of that also went back to the issue of picture making. Is it allowed to make images of people or not, and so on, right? So when this kind of fatwa comes out against TV, or in some countries they give a fatwa that a woman should not drive or something along these lines, it doesn't mean they are necessarily talking about that thing in and of itself, but they are thinking about what may come after it long term, right? So they're saying 10 years, 20 years down the line, we open this door, suddenly we're going to have a lot of other issues and problems. It's going to lead to this, to that, which is haram. So to avoid the haram thing, let's just block it at this door now, which is called sadd al-dhara'i'. Yeah? Block a pathway that's going to lead to something which is forbidden in and of itself. Right? So this is where we need to understand sometimes the context that scholars come from when they're giving a fatwa. Okay? And this is why you cannot really cookie cutter apply fatwas in different places. For example, the fatwa given in some Arab or Middle Eastern country can't always just be taken and applied in America, or in Malaysia, or in Europe, or in Africa. No. Why? Because fatwa is now, I am trying to apply something on a specific scenario. And the scholars have said, the fatwa is based on the perception and understanding of the issue of the mufti. That's why the questioner can trick the mufti into giving the wrong fatwa if he doesn't give the full picture. That's why the smart mufti, he asks few questions sometimes. But what about this? What about that? And the good mufti also many times will not give a fatwa for somewhere that he doesn't live and he doesn't know the full picture. I remember once we were in a country, we asked from a mufti a question about another country. He said, you ask the muftis in that country, don't ask me. I don't know the full situation there. I heard about it, but I cannot appreciate their situation perfectly. And this has caused a lot of problem in recent ages. I know people from a country in North Africa will tell me someone in another Middle Eastern country gave fatwa about issues in our country, caused so many problems for us. Why? Because he didn't understand the situation on the ground. People went to him, asked him a question, framed it in a certain frame, and then he gave his fatwa based on that understanding, which was an incomplete understanding or an incorrect understanding. People grabbed his fatwa and said, Sheikh so-and-so said related to this issue, haram. See, all of you need to stop doing it right away. But that sheikh, he didn't understand. And that sheikh, may Allah forgive him, in some cases, shouldn't have talked about it. Should have said, no, it's not my place to talk about it because I don't live there, I don't fully understand the situation, and I should not just apply my fatwa on them. You understand what I mean? Yeah? And this is where, again, there's a difference between ruling and fatwa. Alcohol is haram. A fatwa might be, Sheikh, if someone is about to die and they're in such and such situation, can they drink alcohol? And the person might say, yes, of course, they can drink to save their life. We don't take his fatwa and say, Sheikh said alcohol is halal, guys, don't you know? He said it. Somebody asked him, yeah, he said it in a specific context. Talking about this guy who needs to save his life and so on. Saving the life, it's allowed to commit a sin that's lesser so that you can save your life, for example. Do we understand? When we talk about some concepts like, for example, is it halal for Muslim men to wear pants? Some decades ago, scholars were saying it's haram for Muslim man to wear pants. What did they say? They said these pants are foreigner pants. These are the pants of the colonizers and so on and so forth. Why? Because you would find in some of those villages that if there were Muslims and non-Muslims living together, only non-Muslims wore pants, Western pants, right? And the Muslims all wore some kind of like what I'm wearing, this kind of long garment, or they wore their traditional clothes that they had been wearing for generations as a part of their culture. So scholars said, the one who wears the pants is doing what? He's imitating the non-believer. He's dressing like the non-believers dress, and the Prophet ﷺ forbid us from doing that, so don't wear it. Why? Because in that town, only a Christian or a non-Muslim would wear those kind of clothes, so they said, you shouldn't wear those clothes, you have to wear what would be identifying you as a Muslim, the Islamic clothes. But nowadays, should we apply such a fatwa? Do we say to people, haram for you to wear pants? No. Because now majority of Muslims are wearing pants. Pants are not something that we would identify as non-Muslim specific clothing, right? But how about if I came in one of these and it's all black, and then I put a collar here with a little white, part in the middle here? Suddenly I look like what? A Catholic priest. We would say, hey, no, this is still very Christian specific clothing. You don't wear that, because that's only people from that religion who have that position wear it. And you are a Muslim, you are not trying to identify yourself to be a non-Muslim. You are proud to be a Muslim and want to look like a Muslim, right? So again, the fatwa may vary and change from the time and the place and the situation. We have to understand that context, especially in the world of WhatsApp and Facebook and all that. People just pass on the fatwa of so-and-so, the fatwa of so-and-so in what context? What was the question? What time and place? who was asking him, right? We cannot just cookie cutter and take that fatwa and try to apply it in every situation. Does it make sense? Okay. Okay, last point they make here, the sunnah is in the halal. There is no righteousness or piety in avoiding something that is clearly and unquestionably halal. For example, something that is lawful and clearly permitted by the Sharia. An example of this is with regards to the food that we consume. It is not permissible to refrain from eating meat based on the basis that such a refrain is an indication of righteousness. A Muslim doesn't come and say, I'm going to be a vegan or a vegetarian because that's more pious and I'll be a better Muslim if I don't eat meat. No. There's no such thing. The Prophet ﷺ didn't forbid meat. Meat is not haram. Right? Such an individual shall not be rewarded for this action. To highlight this point, we can recall the hadith of the 3 men who vowed to do continuous acts of worshipping, praying, fasting, and being celibate on the basis of righteousness. Do you remember that story? 3 men came to the Prophet ﷺ's house. He wasn't home. They asked his wife about him. And they said, we want to know how he lives. How does he worship? So they described, he fasts some days. He prays at night part of the time. He loves to give charity. He does. They described his lifestyle. So they said, wow, he's the Prophet ﷺ. He has so much reward. He's already forgiven. He has nothing to worry about. This is what he's doing. We have to do more. This is their wrong understanding. See, when you have lack of knowledge and proper understanding, you can go in a completely wrong direction. Can you do more than the Prophet ﷺ? Can you be better than the Prophet ﷺ? Of course not. He's the peak example. You say, I'll try to get as close to him as I can and I'll never reach to his level. So these people already understood it wrong. Oh, we're going to do more. So one of them said, I'm going to fast every day. There'll be no day where I'm eating normally. The other one said, I'm not going to sleep at night at all. I'm going to stay up all night, every night, praying the entire night. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't do that. He did that some days, but most days he sleeps part of the night and he prays for a part of the night. The other one came and said, I'm never going to get married. I'm not going to worry about those desires. I'm going to just devote myself to worship and serving Allah. No time for women and children and all this stuff. Right? So this is what they think is righteousness. The Prophet ﷺ came home. They told him these people came and here's what they said. So he went to the masjid. He said, where are the men who came and asked about me? They said, we are here, O Messenger of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ corrected them. He said, as for me, I fast some days, I eat on some days. I pray part of the night and I sleep part of the night, and I get married. So whoever turns away from my sunnah is what? Is not one of us. He's not part of me anymore. You are making up your own sunnah. You are making the halal haram. You made sleeping haram. You made eating food haram. You made getting married haram. What is this? You cannot do that. You have to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. There is no righteousness in forbidding upon yourself that which is halal from Allah. We understand the concept, yes? When the Prophet ﷺ heard of the 3 men's vows, he was very disappointed. He called them and told them he was the most righteous and pious amongst them, yet he slept and he ate and he got married. Moreover, the Prophet ﷺ made a principle concerning this matter by saying, whoever turns away from my sunnah or my way is not a part of me. Thus, if something is clearly permissible in the Sharia, there is no point in refraining from it, thinking that it's an act of ibadah. An exception to this would be if it's for a legitimate reason specific to the person. For example, your doctor said you have high cholesterol, stop eating red meat. So you stop eating it, or you reduce for your health. Right? Or where you live, you buy the meat, you found out they abuse the animals and it's a horrible slaughterhouse the way they treat the animal, so you don't feel comfortable to eat it anymore. So you say, I'm just going to eat seafood or chicken instead or something like that. That's fine. You are not making the halal haram. Or you are not thinking that you are being so righteous by giving up something halal. No, there's some other underlying reason why you are making that adjustment. Does that make sense? So some people will say, oh, I don't want to eat the meat because it's not treated ethically anymore. They're abusing the animals and so on. So I choose not to eat it. That's your choice. That's fine. Allah knows best. Conclusion, this hadith equips Muslims with a practical and simple criterion by which to judge the doubtful acts and situations. Doubtful matters come up frequently in the lives of all the people, be they big matters or small. Thus, the practicality of this hadith of only a few words is immense. Muslims need to understand how to apply such a criterion correctly and not to be deceived by the wrong perceptions or personal interests. Is it clear, inshallah? Did we learn something new today? Alhamdulillah, great. Any questions, any comments? Any corrections, any concerns? Yes, brother. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I would like to ask about to whom you take the knowledge.
To
whom you take the knowledge.
Who should we take the knowledge from?
Yes, yeah. Sometimes people say that don't follow this ustad because he doesn't follow sunnah. He bring a lot of subhat to you. Although maybe thousands of people come during his preach. So what is your opinion about that?
I couldn't understand the last statement. Many people say what?
Many people say that you cannot follow this ustad because he bring you subhat to you.
Shubha, okay. He will bring shubha to you. Okay.
Yeah, and we have to sort it out. Let's say this majlis maybe bring you subhat and we cannot follow something like that. Although maybe this ustad will a lot of people come to his preach.
Sure. Okay. So the brother is saying, how do we know who to take our knowledge from, who to learn from, and so on, right? It's a very important point because your knowledge that you are learning is your deen. Your religion is the knowledge that you gain and that you know. And we take the knowledge from people, so we have to look closely at the people that we are taking the knowledge from. The scholars have said what you will try to use when determining if you take knowledge from a person or not is you listen in their words. Are they saying the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah said, do they quote these kind of things or not? If they don't, if all the time they're only saying, I think, I feel, in my dream I saw, my opinion is, then this is not the right kind of knowledge that we want. Because we are not following that person as a prophet or a messenger. We are following Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So we always try to see that they are linking it back to the Quran and the Sunnah, because these are the two sources. Now the problem is, all the scholars, all the different deviant groups out there will still at the end of the day say in general, Quran and Sunnah. We believe in Quran and Sunnah. The main problem will be the interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah, the application of the Quran and Sunnah. So now the scholars have said you have to add another layer on, and that is, how do we understand and apply the Quran and Sunnah? It should be based on what the Prophet ﷺ himself did and what the best generation that ever lived did. Those are the Sahaba who lived with him. So the Prophet ﷺ told us, he said, the best generation is my generation, and then the one that comes after them, and then the one that comes after them, and then lying would become widespread. So the reality is those first three generations were blessed due to the proximity to the Prophet ﷺ and his life and the companions' lives. So they took from the source. And the farther you get away from the source, the more watered down and diluted and misguided the things can become over time. It's only natural, right? So we always try to then go back and see, what did the Sahaba say about that ayah of Quran? What did the Sahaba understand from this saying of the Prophet ﷺ? How did they apply it in their life, even after he was gone? Because that's when they were making Ijtihad, for example, and giving fatwas and trying to understand the various issues. So in general, we then go back to their understanding. These righteous three generations, how is it that they understand Islam or understood Islam? Yes? So that's where usually the speaker you're listening to, are they always quoting Sahaba said, these great scholars in the early days said, or are they only referring, for example, to somebody maybe from our contemporary time and they never really link things back to the early days? That would be concerning, right? Because we don't consider it valid that somebody will come today and say, hey, listen, I'm going to reinterpret the Quran. Whatever the people at that time thought is no longer valid because we live in the 21st century. We're just going to give a totally new understanding to all of the Quran. No, unacceptable. Why? Because the Quran was revealed to them. One of them can openly and proudly say, there's not a verse in Quran except I know when it was revealed, where it was revealed, and why it was revealed. None of us can say that because we weren't alive. The verses were being revealed because of them. They would ask a question, Allah would reveal the answer. They would be with the Prophet ﷺ doing something. Allah would reveal verses of Quran about that incident. Who can understand it better than them? Nobody. Somebody cannot come today and say, listen, I think it means this. You weren't there. You don't know. Your version and understanding of Arabic language is not as strong and the same as theirs, because the Arabic that they spoke at that time is not spoken today anymore, right? If the Prophet ﷺ were here today and he heard an Egyptian speaking Arabic, he wouldn't understand what the guy is saying. And the Egyptians sometimes also cannot understand the Fusha and the formal Arabic of the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ, right? So there's a problem for us to say, hey, we want to have our own modern take and twist on Islam. No, it doesn't need that, because Islam came down at that time valid for every time and for every place. So this should usually be the criteria. How do we know who the scholars are? They're the people that other scholars said they are scholars. And a scholar doesn't mean they have lots of followers, or they go on the TV and thousands of people love them and they're fans and they get a lot of likes on Facebook. That doesn't mean somebody's a scholar. That means they're popular. I could probably bring somebody who has more fans and followers than them, who's a non-Muslim, who's even a very vulgar and lewd character in society, and they have millions of likes and followers and so on. We don't use that as a criteria to determine if someone is good or bad, or somebody's on the right track. There are some great scholars, maybe the greatest scholars in our ummah, their names are unknown to most of us, right? They live in some village somewhere, they live in the desert somewhere, not many people have exposure to them or know about them, but their knowledge is very deep and very great. So in general, what we should try to do, especially in the very beginning of our practice and learning of Islam, is stick to one teacher. Don't confuse yourself with taking too many opinions and all that until you have enough knowledge. Stick with one teacher. That teacher should be somebody that, as we said, has knowledge, and that knowledge is that they quote from the Quran and Sunnah, that they understand according to the understanding of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. And number two, that you see them as an individual as righteous, because knowledge alone is not enough. Right? There are people that have a lot of knowledge, but they are purchased by people. They give their fatwa according to the highest bidder. Right? Their job is rubber stamp. If the government or whatever entity it might be in some country or another pushes hard enough on them, then they will say whatever they're told to say. And you know, we don't envy the situation that they're in, because nowadays people are being put in jail and people are going through a hard time if they just even speak the truth or are related to the truth in any way in some of those countries in the world, right? May Allah protect us and free our scholars. So if you are pleased with somebody's religion, you see them as righteous, as pious, as practicing what they preach, and at the same time their message is based on knowledge, then that's the teacher that you should follow, inshallah, and seek to gain knowledge yourself more and more, so that then you can begin to differentiate, because that teacher may be wrong on some opinions and not necessarily right all the time, as we said. Hopefully that makes sense, yeah? Okay, any other questions or comments, sister? Any microphone?
Assalamualaikum, Ustaz.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I came across a hadith which says, whoever believes in Allah and the last day, then he is not to let his wife enter the hammam, and whoever believes in Allah and the last day, then he is not to enter the hammam without
No, I didn't understand. What's the word you are saying? Can you read it again?
Okay. Whoever believes in Allah and the last day,
okay,
then he is not to let his wife enter the hammam.
The what?
Hammam.
Hammam, the bathroom?
Yeah.
Hammam is an Arabic word which means bathroom.
Okay. And I continue the hadith. And whoever believes in Allah and the last day, then he is not to enter the hammam without an izar.
Okay.
Okay. And whoever believes in Allah and the last day, then he is not to sit at a spread in which khamar is circulated. So the reason I asked is I've came across the Malay version which translate hammam as public area. So I'm not sure what is hammam. Is it true it's a public area?
Hammam is a bathroom. Today when Arabs say hammam, they mean the toilet. in the old days when they said hammam, it's like, if you can imagine, the Turkish bath, where people go and there might be some public bathing where people are bathing together. They're saying this is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ?
Yeah,
Narrated by who? By which, in which collection it's reported?
It's Jami' at-Tirmizi.
Okay. So we'd have to go back and see what the scholars have commented about it. I'd like to read it in Arabic to be able to understand it fully.
The English reference, volume 5, book 41, hadith 2801.
So yeah, I mean, if you allow me to look it up and research it, then I can see what they said. You want the interpretation of it? Yeah. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it, so I'd have to go back and see what they said before I comment on it. Allahu alam.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah. Wa iyyakum.
Assalamu alaikum, Ustad.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I have one question.
Okay.
I know the basic is that loan is basically haram, especially from the bank. But of course there are specific situations. So I'm asking, let's say someone in the situation that they have tried their best not to take loan in order for them to survive, in the very challenging economy right now. And then they are just being pushed into the situation where they have to take the loan in order to fulfill their basics, for example, transportation, in order for them to move from one place to another place. So can you give some advice, like what a person should do if, a person in that situation? Jazakallah.
Wa iyyakum. Okay, so in general, a loan is not haram in Islam. But the loan in Islam is not something you make money out of. So a loan in Islam is usually, we call it what? Qard? Qard what? Qard Hasan, right? We call it a goodly loan. It's a loan that you give for the sake of Allah. Your intention is to help your fellow brother or sister community member. So you give the loan without expecting anything in return from that person. You lend them the money because they're in need. It's a charitable act. You expect to get the money back, the principal that you gave, with reward from Allah. That's it. So ideally, the Islamic economic system is not based on banks. If there's a bank, the bank is run by the government. And the government gives loans to people without interest and gets that money back. And the bank will store and safekeep the money of the people and so on, right? But if you want profit, then you do what? You do investment. It's not just you give your money, they lend the money out, and then everybody makes money out of the lending process. This is not the way. This is haram. Okay? So interest is when there is money being given for what they call the time value of money. No, this is not the Islamic way. So it's not haram to take a loan. It's preferred not to take a loan unless you absolutely have to, because a loan is something which is a big deal in Islam. If you die owing money, especially when you could have paid it off and so on, then it's something which is punishable. And the Prophet ﷺ used to warn people about it, used to ask people to pay off the debts of others after they had died if they hadn't paid off their debt, and so on, right? It's something which you can be punished in the hereafter for. So the person prefers not to take a loan unless they absolutely must. If we must, then it's good to give loans, and the Sahaba used to love to give loans even more than giving charity sometimes. Why? Because you could give the same amount more than once if you had extra money. So you would give, the person pays you back eventually, you give again, and you are well enough off, so you help the others and so on. Yeah? Now, if we say the only option I have is a haram loan, meaning there's no family and friends willing to give me a halal loan, which is where they loan me money and I pay them back at a set amount of time or payments without interest. I pay them back the amount I took. I borrowed 5,000, I pay them back 5,000, 500 a month for whatever period of time, right? That's the Islamically permissible way. If that's not an option, and I'm saying I must take from a bank, then the haram can become permissible temporarily if it's a life and death kind of situation, right? So if I'm saying it's one of my darurat, it's one of my necessities of life, right? I cannot get food, I cannot get drink, I cannot survive without doing this haram action, then the haram action is permissible for that person to do. Why? Because they have to get this basic necessity, they have to save their life. So in that situation, they can do the haram, not believing that it's halal, knowing that it's haram, but doing it because they were left with no other choice. So if the person we are talking about is in such a situation, okay. But if the person says, I want to make a transformation, and what's my transformation? I want to renovate my house to the latest fashion and kitchen model, and I need a newer car because my car is 2 years old, you know, and it's a shame for me. I should be driving the latest 7 class, whatever, S class, this, and no, come on. Then this is not the way. This is not the transformation we are talking about. It's halal for you to go and finance through haram means, right? Okay? You will see that some of those who gave fatwa, for example, they will say that in America, so-and-so famous scholar said it's halal to take a loan from a bank to buy a house. But then when you talk to people about who were there in that situation in America, when the question was asked, how was the question asked to the sheikh? You find the questioner would say something like, listen, I have 7 kids, and there's no apartment complex that will allow us to rent an apartment with that many people because they only allow X number of people per room, and the maximum size of the complex is 3-bedroom unit, for example, right? So I cannot afford to buy, nor am I being allowed to rent. Therefore, the only option I have is I must take a loan, and through that loan, the payment will be lower than if I were going to rent the house, and that's the only way I can live. Otherwise, my family and I are homeless and we're all going to die. So when you paint the picture in such a way, then the sheikh tells you, go for it, do it. You're going to die, you have no choice, then do it. Save your life, fine. So we don't take that fatwa and then say, hey, everybody, so-and-so said it's halal to buy a house with interest because we live in America. And it's so hard for us and we have no choice and we must all do it. Oh, that's not what he said, right? There was some kind of circumstance or situation that was described based on that. Now that same scholar maybe later on changed his opinion and even said it's allowed for everybody and all that, I don't know. But the idea is, initially, it may have been based on this specific scenario which was painted for him. So the person also needs to be honest with themselves. This is where we said, you feel in your heart, what is your heart saying? Is your heart saying, really, you're going to die unless you take this haram loan? Or it's you want to get a Ducati Mercedes, motorcycle, and if you didn't get that motorcycle, you're not going to enjoy your life, so you're going to go get the loan with the haram way to buy this motorcycle. You really need the motorcycle to survive? You're going to die without it? You're not, right? So, ad-darurat tubih al-mahdhurat, they said, scholars said, the darura, the absolute necessity, makes the forbidden permissible temporarily. Right? This is a general rule. Allahu a'lam. So I'm not giving a fatwa for any specific scenario, I'm just explaining to you a general rule, okay? Don't go take a haram loan in my name. Allahu a'lam. And may Allah give us a way out. Turn to Allah. Allah says, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever fears Allah has taqwa, Allah will give them a way out. وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. And Allah will provide for them sustenance from avenues they never anticipated or imagined. The scholars said, when interpreting these kind of things, they said, you were monitoring the regular avenues, just waiting. Am I going to get an increase in my salary at work? Am I going to get this money from here or there? But Allah says He'll provide from you from the place you didn't see it or expect it. So know that it's coming. Even though you don't see it, it will be there inshallah. If you have taqwa, if you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you put your reliance on Him. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Allah says whoever puts their trust in Allah, Allah will always be sufficient for them. Allah will always be enough for them and help them inshallah. Okay, any other questions? I think we end there inshallah. There's a request for dua from one of our jama'ah. There's a sister by the name of Zurayda Umar. She comes to the Wednesday class, and she's the mother of brother Amir from the Al-Khadim office, and also she's the wife of brother Muhammad Noor from Al-Khadim's AJK. Okay, so we'll make a dua for her inshallah. I'll say it in Arabic if you don't mind, then you all can say Ameen with that. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Ya Allah, Ya Rabbi, Ya Dhal Jalali wal Ikram. Ya Hayyu, Ya Qayyum, bi rahmatika nastaghith. أصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين. اللهم رب الناس اذهب البأس اشفي أنت الشافي لا شفاء إلا شفاؤك شفاء لا يغادر سقما. نسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم أن يشفي أختنا زريدة عمر. اللهم رب الناس اذهب البأس اشفي أنت الشافي لا شفاء إلا شفاؤك شفاء لا يغادر سقما. أسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم أن يشفيها. 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 اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم ردنا إلى دينك ردا جميلا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think it's dhuhr time already. Oh no, it's not yet, huh? Only one.